Well, I kind of like the idea of multiple academies and multiple schools. University of North Georgia is one of those schools that competes across the nation, actually dominates. A little school in Georgia actually dominating the cyber intelligence community. It's been great to see. I think it's also an elite Army school for you Army guys out there. I see you got a Marine here, and cyber is just kind of amazing leap of technology. When we used to eat, well, we still eat crayons, but we're doing a little bit of things in now. Really excited to see the evolution from a guy who literally learned how to use a computer in the Marine Corps, which is kind of a scary thought at that. But one of the things I've noticed that's maybe a great recruiting tool, and I wanted to kind of get your affirmation, maybe expand upon, just like we recruit lawyers. And one of the reasons we're great at recruiting lawyers is because we give them real trial experience. Most people in the cyber community can't go out there and practice this offensively unless they work for the government. So this is a great opportunity, not just to develop something, but to actually apply it, which is a great selling tool. But what else can we do to not only train people, but recruit them and retain them in these cyber commands, which I think is essentially all in the same arena of being competitive in this very world competitive market?
So I appreciate the highlighting you started out with the talent that we get from a pretty wide variety of universities, many of which are the NSA Cyber Centers of Excellence School. Has been a great program to be able to get that pipeline in. The challenge that we're really now faced with is how do we recruit them in full time and how do we retain them? And I think there's the primary thing that we've seen from our force over the last few years is the importance of keeping them on mission and giving them the opportunities to build that talent that, as you very accurately highlight, is something they can only do in our force. And then also making sure that we have the right incentive structure, we have the right career paths so that they can grow and they can succeed in their service, but do it in a way that is meaningful for building that mastery into the skill that we have today.
Fantastic. General Rudd, yesterday we had a great opportunity to speak in person, kind of talk about the futures. We talked about a united command, which is going to be a central focus, I think, of this committee, is kind of, do we do this combined, do we do this separate? And I've heard arguments on both. I'm kind of open-minded, and I'm forming an opinion every single day, trying to be more educated. Specifically to the Marine Corps, though, I was going to ask, when we first got computers and we broke a bunch along the way, and we learned in service, now we're out service and we're learning all these people, how does the Marine Forces Cyber, also known as MARFOR Cyber, currently support the Joint Force? What role do they play in the future fight as far as the difference between the separation as an independent entity, kind of like we did with EA6Bs, where we use it as a purple force, or is it used specifically for a Marine Corps mission, which is kind of a tough question, I know, but if you could just tell me the difference between the applications, which will help me make up my mind as to how we form the future.
So this is it right here, Congressman, right? No pressure. Hey, just one point on the recruiting, if I could go back to that question. I think there's tremendous opportunity to tell the cyber story, maybe in a different way, maybe in a more open way than what we've done previously, that it's going to generate interest around. I don't know that I can recall a time in our history where we've talked more about it openly, perhaps because maybe we've never done as much as we have done in recent history, but that's one point. On the question with regard to support to the Joint Force, MARFOR Cyber is doing a tremendous job across a number of commands. And again, in support of the Joint Force, integrating really seamlessly, whether it's a combatant command or special operations command, they do tremendous work, again, in real time, 24/7 commitment. The integration is really dependent upon culture, communication, and co-location in many cases. If they can be side by side, it doesn't always have to be. Obviously, there's a tremendous power in the remote aspect of the cyber force, but those are kind of key aspects that I'd highlight to your question.
So specifically, do you think, both of you, I'm just curious, what is the main advantage of having each service have their own cyber command versus a combined?
So I think one of the things that is important to discuss as we think about a cyber service is where the boundary of things and services, like defending their networks and defending the weapon systems and ensuring cybersecurity in the weapon systems they build, how that would separate out from things like a cyber mission force that would conduct operations in support of the Joint Force, and ensuring that those boundaries are well-defined as you would think about different organizational constructs going forward.
All right, with that, I'm out of time, and I yield. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Ryan, you are recognized, sir, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you both for being here. Assistant Secretary, thanks for the time. Was that last week or this week, whenever it was? Thank you. General, thanks twice in 1 week. Sorry about that. I want to build on really good, I think, encouraging bipartisan discussion about broadening the base and the foundation of our cyber talent force as a nation, not just whatever we end up, however we end up organizing within and across the services and within DoD, really thinking about this as a national problem. And General Rudd, you talked about this and sort of alluded to it earlier, and you talked about it in your written testimony. I think you described it as a joint cyber reserve component or funded reimbursable authority in your submitted statement. General Hartman, on his departure, talked about a cyber auxiliary. We talked a little bit as well, Assistant Secretary. I think would love to hear both of your thoughts on this. This is something I've been working on the last few years. We've had multiple attempts in the NDAA to introduce this concept. Specifically, how do we get the full breadth of our civilian cyber force engaged at various levels of, if one level is I'm doing a PT test every month and I'm in uniform, and the other level is no engagement. How do we broaden that out and create multiple avenues for people to plug in and serve a whole host of missions? So, General, starting with you, if you wouldn't mind expanding on your testimony and sharing any thoughts there.
Sure, Congressman. No, I think there's tremendous opportunity with this idea, whether it's reserve, auxiliary, or all of the above. I think we don't need to limit the manner in which we approach this, because again, the talent is so unique, and there's such tremendous opportunity in the commercial sector to leverage expertise, and by extension, you're going to force multiply. We can be more creative. We can figure out, I think, we may be some of our own impediments in terms of process, speed at which we can grant clearances, et cetera. I think we need to be more creative about that. It's definitely something that I'm interested in taking a deep look at as part of my initial assessment. I know Honorable Sutton and her team have looked at it in depth, but again, I just don't think we can afford to limit the creative solutions to expanding the cyber workforce, and in doing so, leverage tremendous talent that's out there.
And maybe just to lead into you, Assistant Secretary, agree more is always better generally. I think particularly every dollar we can spend on cyber, the ROI is dramatically higher than a lot of our other opportunity costs. But what would you see as